Let's go ahead and get started. Let's make this a little bit bigger here. Hopefully it doesn't like go off on a timer on me. All right, welcome to Destiny 2 Advanced Raid Training. I wanted to kind of do this to help players become more familiar with raiding and the tactics that you can use in different raids and just raiding in general in Destiny. Uh, I'm assuming if you're watching this, you're an avid player, or at least you've played for quite some time and you've got to end game and you have at least dabbled in raiding. I didn't want to do a basic raid training video or uh, class, I guess, because I feel it's too basic. Anything that I'm going to tell you that's basic, you probably already know, because basic stuff is just that. It's very basic. So you go into a raid, your objective is to clear the ads, get to a boss, fight the boss, and kill the boss. That is the basics of raiding, period. But it is the intricacies within all of raiding in general that you need to be able to adapt and overcome in different scenarios. So let's get started with the first part. And you probably couldn't see this coming, but the first part of being a better or becoming a better raider is preparation. This is what I normally do. I do point one on this. I find helpful videos and guides on YouTube, and I watch them like it's my job. Um, Not because I have to, but because I want to know everything I can before I go into a raid. Um, this may not help some people, it may help other people. So I've listed a few other things on here that may help you better than watching somebody else's video on YouTube or wherever you watch videos at. So you can read a raid guide. There are like Kotaku and like a bunch of other places. They do write-ups on these different raids and the different bosses within the raids. And they some of them are pretty good. I don't normally read raid guides. I feel like I get a better grasp of the concept if I watch a video, because reading just for me is not going to help me understand the flow of the fight. And for me to be able to not only learn the fight, but to be able to teach the fight, I need to know the entire flow of the fight. And as I will explain later, most fights have a roller coaster effect. You're going to have periods of a fight where you start and then it goes up, like you're going up the slope of the roller coaster, and then you peak, and that might be damage phase more than likely, and then you're going to go back down to the bottom, and then it's going to slow down for a bit, then it's going to peak again if you have to do like multiple damage phases in order to get a boss down. And there's different things you have to work with and be aware of when you're fighting certain bosses. The reason I put read a raid guide on here is because sometimes in the video guides they are not super specific, as much specificity as I would like them to have. So like if they are explaining a specific debuff or a buff, for instance. So let's take the COS, the very first encounter of COS, which is the most recent raid in Destiny 2. It is where you're having to fend off different waves of enemies and you're having to shoot crystals in order to create a bridge across a gap in order to get to the other side. Um, so when crystals come in, you have to do a switching thing. So you have to make sure you're constantly keeping the witch's buff refreshed on you and your partner. So being able to know what the witch's buff does, or debuff, however you want to look at it, witch's blessing, it is it is crucial to understanding not just that encounter, but every single encounter following that. That is the main key thing of the whole raid, is the witch's buff. So if you learn the witch's buff and how it works very well, you will do very well in COS, more than likely, at least for the first two parts. The last two parts are always up in the air because it doesn't just take you knowing what you're doing. Everybody has to know what they're doing in the last two phases in order to get it down. So, third point, have a meeting with your raid team to discuss a plan or go over mechanics. This could be very helpful. I don't ever get to do this with any of my raid teams because time-wise, timelines are very strenuous, especially if you're an adult like myself and you work night shift, because nobody's awake when you are. Like hardly anybody, except anybody else that works nights. I have one friend that works nights, and I can talk to him at night about different stuff. Um, but I don't always get to raid with him either, because sometimes he has to work the weekend too. But anyway, if you can have a meeting with your raid team to discuss things that you might struggle on, that could be very helpful in helping you prepare for a raid. Even if it's a raid you've never done before, you can get together with your raid team and discuss different things. Okay, how are we going to tackle this? What do I need to be? What do I need to bring, like weapon wise? Are there any certain requirements other than these weapons that you would have me bring? As a ask the raid leader. So anyway, stuff like that is stuff you need to go over. Point four: get adequate rest and stay hydrated. Um, that's pretty obvious, I'm sure, but if you go into a raid and you're already sluggish and tired, your performance is probably not going to be very well. You're going to do a lot worse than you would normally do. And stay hydrated. That's just obvious. You don't want to be like, I don't know, just you don't want to pass out during a raid from dehydration. So anyway, I just added that in there for health purposes, I suppose. Anyway, but the main point is get adequate rest, because you need to be awake and you need to have your reflexes at their peak in order to perform well. Um, and this last point, this is my opinion. I didn't get this from anywhere. This is not statistically proven. So don't jump on me and be like, oh my God, how do we know that? Like, prepared guardians are 50% more likely to complete their raid. And what I mean by that is guardians who do any preparation at all, who have an idea of what's coming at them and what's required of them, are going to be vastly more prepared than somebody who knows absolutely nothing and goes into a raid knowing absolutely nothing. So that's literally the definition of having to handhold somebody through a raid or carry them. We we mostly say carry. So holding their hand or carrying them through a raid, pretty much the same thing. Nobody really likes to do it, but we do it because we have friends that need carrying sometimes. Now, we would love for those friends to do a little bit of preparation in order to have some kind of idea of what's going on, but sometimes it just doesn't happen. But anyway, if your whole Guardian team is prepared or has done some preparation, I feel like you are 50% more likely to complete your raid. That is just my personal opinion, but I believe that wholeheartedly, because anytime that I do preparation for a raid, I feel like I outperform just about everybody in the raid, especially if I'm doing something like LFG. Unfortunately, I end up teaching most of the fights. I'm like, okay, you have this mechanic wrong. Okay, you're doing this wrong. That's not how this goes. If you'd done any preparation, you would know this. So anyway, that's it for preparation. Now we're going to move on to pretty much the most beefy section of this whole class, and that is communication. Communication is the biggest thing within rating. If your communication is poor, you will not do well. If your communication is great, then you will outdo anything that you thought you would do. Like if you said these are the I'm going to do this well in the raid. If you have good communication, you will outperform what you thought you would. So there are two types of communication, effective and ineffective communication. And I've defined these as such. These are my own definitions of how I feel these should be defined and how I think you should think about these in your mind whenever you're coming across different mechanics that you're having to explain. So effective communication. This is communication that prepares team members for various mechanics in an encounter. Call-outs of key components are crucial to attaining victory. Ineffective communication. This communication this is communication that doesn't add any useful information to the raid team in order to accomplish specific objectives in an encounter. This type of communication tends to be over-provided in raid groups, often overriding anyone trying to use effective communication. So from here on out, we're just going to call effective and ineffective because having to say ineffective and effective communication all the time just gets it's too many words. So I could probably do something with that, but this is the best way I can think of to explain it just outright. So, but you know in your mind now what these mean. So by maximizing your effective communication and minimizing the ineffective types of communication, the raid team should see an increase in the rate of progression. So I've got a video pulled up. I tried my best to pull up a video of ineffective communication because there are tons of examples out there. However, there's far too much language. Um, just like I can't be showing that on my Twitch. It's just not. I can't. Yeah, if you want to go look up those, there are plenty of videos of people communicating very badly on Destiny 2 in different raids. But I did pull up this one video. um, I'm sure you've heard of the raid team. I think that's redeemed or reborn, something like that. I don't remember his raid team. Where's it at? I'm trying to find it here. Okay, here it is. But it's Glad. So I'm sure you've heard of Glad before. And he has, I don't remember exactly how many raid firsts he has, but I think it's at least two. He has at least two world first raid completions. And this is a video, and I'm only going to show a short portion of it so that we can continue on with uh, the rest of the class. But this first part, this is their Scourge of the Past speed run, and he even admits down in the thing that they've only been doing this for a few runs. Now you are going to hear some ineffective communication in this, but you have to realize that these guys are professionals. This is like what they do. And I could be wrong about this, but I'm pretty sure he gets paid to do this. Um, he gets paid to be this good by somebody. He's got to. Like, there's got to be somebody paying him to be this good. Anyway, take a listen and see if you can pick out the very few ineffective communications, and then the rest I feel is all effective communication. Just take a listen real quick.
All right, 3, 2, 1, go.
How come we never get the one where he's on the closer platform?
Yeah. I don't know what keeps happening. It's weird.
Maybe it depends how long you wait at the start.
Middle, right behind, bottom right, to me.
Right? Alright. Are we...
Literally right to my right. Going in the alley now, in the alley. North.
Okay, I see him. Crush, you go over, you bait. You bait. You go opposite side,
Watch
go.
out, Brads. Watch out, Brads.
Yep, got him.
I got first.
5. I got second. 3.
Okay,
I'll be on 3.
I'll be map. I can trade with somebody.
Next guy?
Next guy is right to the right by 2. South of 2, towards the inside a little. Yep, go ahead. So between 2 and 3, exactly between 2 and 3. You guys are right on him right now. Boom, right there.
Oh,
There you go, boom. Yep.
I'm picking up a ball there. Like, pick up. You guys are good. I'm picking up first.
Okay, 5.
3.
3, yep.
Okay, helping at 3.
Glad, you mean go to the next one? He's right in front of us.
Okay,
Right down here.
I cannot pick
He's
up.
running.
I'm just gonna
on
read
him
map.
right now.
I can't pick up.
You gotta kill him. You gotta kill him. Help me.
I'm coming.
I can read map. I'm good.
Alright, we're good.
I can read it.
Alright, you got map? Cool.
Is there another one up? Where's
I need
it?
somebody else to pick this up, though.
I'm here. I can pick
Oh,
up.
he needs to pick it up.
I can pick up.
Okay, pick it up.
Pick it up.
One.
Perfect. Sway, you clear one. I'm going back up to map.
Next captain is not spawned yet.
This will be last one,
He's
I think.
far left.
Far left. This will be
To the
last
north.
one.
He's moving up like the street to south. Go to your left, Frank. Left.
Yep.
In the
Is
street.
this
He's
him
right.
here?
He's
he's on
right.
your
Yeah,
building
right
right.
on you guys right now. Boom. Two of you
Yeah,
are on him.
yep,
Boom.
you're there.
Get him. I'll read
can't
map.
pick
You
up.
go.
Who can pick up? I'll-
5. Just go to three. Go to 3. Everybody go to 3. Just die. The person with 5 just die at
Let me
3.
push you as well, Frank.
Yeah.
Never mind. I guess we keep going.
Yeah, person with 5 just die. You can slam first, right, and kill yourself.
Yeah, just them.
Does that
Kill the
kill
servers
us all?
fast. No. Kill the other servitor.
Instead. Okay, perfect. All right.
Someone open the chest.
I'm open.
Okay.
Yeah, we got it.
Okay.
All right, that's it. They did the first part of Scourge of the Past in less than 3 minutes and 30 seconds. So, pretty dang awesome. Now, if you could pick out the types of effective and ineffective communication, there was a whole lot of effective communication, and I will get more in detail with that a little bit later. But basically, anything that is helping you accomplish a goal that is going to either keep you from wiping or to keep one of your teammates alive is effective communication. Because there are going to be many wipe mechanics within the Raids of Destiny. So anything that you can inform your other teammates of to help them prevent wiping or to keep themselves alive, I would say that is effective communication. Now, the only part I thought was ineffective communication within that short little video there was where they were talking about where the boss spawns or where that first captain spawns. Sometimes they'll spawn on that bottom behind the map, and I guess sometimes he can spawn elsewhere. I believe that's what they were talking about. But that's neither here nor there because, like I said, these guys know what they're doing. But that if I could have provided a better explanation or example of ineffective communication, I would. But there is just nothing on YouTube that is clean enough to show you guys. It is all super bad. uh, it's just, yeah. So feel free to go look at those at your own leisure, and you will understand what I'm talking about. But anyway, let's go ahead and continue on to the next slide. Communication Plus. This is additional things that you can do as a team member yourself, as a raid member, to help communicate more clearly what is going on within said encounter in the raid you're doing. So what I think is probably pretty crucial is there's no I in team. Stop using I and me statements in raids. So refer to yourself in the third person. If you have a long in-game name, then try to shorten it to one syllable if possible. So in most raids, anytime I'm doing a raid, people just call me White. So for anybody in the chat, so I'd say Worthy Wally, people probably should just call you Wally in raids. Or Social Geek Scene, they could call you Social or Geek, I don't know, whatever you prefer. um, or Scene, I don't even know. Or Sock for short, maybe. Social, I don't know. Anyway, shorten it to as little as you can get it, like as short of a name that you will recognize as being you as you can possibly get to. And I know for some names that's going to be a lot harder than others because some people have some weird names out there and maybe they just can't be shortened. Um, but I think for the most part, if you try pretty hard, you can probably shorten it. Either that or I don't know, refer to them as a code name. If they just have such a wacky name that you can't shorten it for some reason, give them a code name or something like that. That's the only thing I know to suggest there. But the key here is just to stop using I and me statements, because when you say I have it or I have the sphere, um, who's going to be guarding the point, me, I'll do it. Nobody knows what you mean. And I mean, if you have the same people you're raiding with all the time, then maybe they'll become very familiar with your voice and they know who you are by your voice. But for the most part, that's probably not going to be the case because you're probably going to be raiding with a lot of different people. I know I do. I wish I had a static raid team. That would be ideal, but I don't. I never have. And I'm randomly raiding so often that I probably never will. Um, because I enjoy helping people too. I enjoy helping people through the raids. So this is just one step closer to getting, um, basically having a way to be able to understand very quickly who is saying what. So because the quicker you can hear and understand something, so if you know that George has the thing that you need and he's on your left and he says George has it, then you know you got to go left. But if he says I have it, you have no idea where I is. You have no idea where me is. Those aren't good uh, words to be using to explain what you're trying, the information you're trying to convey. So next point, define specific mechanic names. This pretty much follows hand in hand with the last point too, which is define specific location names. So um, this is normally like if you do watch videos and stuff like that, a lot of the defining of the different names is done for you. But if you're in there and you haven't watched any videos and you're doing this on your own for some reason, or you don't like one of the names that the people on the videos have been using, make up your own name. But again, I would try to keep it as short as possible. So uh, like the flower, like in the gardens, where in Leviathan when you're fighting the dogs. So the easiest way to explain that fight is L1, L2, L3, R1, R2, R3, and then you have rocks, and then you have trees. So all those are short. All those are short. You can say those very quickly, and you know where to go. So that's what I mean by defining specific mechanic names, because nobody called those that when they first entered that room. That was just something that people had to develop. You had to develop different terminology for the different areas to go to when you encounter stuff like that, and you need to be able to do that for different mechanics in other raids that you'll encounter as well. Especially if you don't like or don't understand a certain name that somebody is giving to a specific location or mechanic. So, like the mechanic where the crystal is floating around the room in COS phase. It's in phase 1 and 2, I think. Yeah. Or is it just 2? I think it's phase 2. I can't remember. It's either one phase 2. I think it's phase 2. Pretty sure. But anyway, um, being able to call out where that's at in a very quick fashion is key to passing that part of the raid. Um, if you mess up and you're not either helping your teammates on the other side out who may not notice that their crystal has spawned, then you're probably going to wipe. But knowing where that crystal is at all times and being able to say it quickly is good. So what I normally do for that is say I'm at void. I say crystal is at void. And then once we destroy the crystal there, we say crystal is going to stairs. And then, because it always goes clockwise, and then the stairs knows in their mind, they're like, okay, we got to be listening for that ding. That's an audio cue, and I'll get to that in a minute. Audio cues and visual cues. But those are different things that you can use and adapt yourself to in order to make yourself quicker. It is all about speed in raids. It really is. It's all about speed in raids. The quicker you can get something done, the faster you will pass an encounter, and you won't have to worry about countdown timers and all that jazz, for the most part. So anyway, if you can get mechanic names defined and location names defined, that way everybody's on the same page when you're trying to explain something, then you will be more prepared to conquer different encounters. All right, this is what I was talking about a second ago. So sight, sound, and touch, those are the three senses that you need to hone in when it comes to raiding. Why? Because there are audio and visual cues. Once you see and or hear something, you will need to act quickly to get things done. So this happens in every raid. Every single raid, even in D1, this happened in every single raid. You have not only audio cues, but normally an audio cue is followed by a visual cue. Not always, but most of the time, audio cues are followed by visual cues, or they happen at the same time. It's always not always hand in hand, but they always happen because that is how you know something is going to take place is by an audio cue or a visual cue. Once you see and or hear that thing happening, you know, okay, this is the exact moment we need to be doing this. Um, so the quicker you can hone in your hearing and your visual senses, the quicker you can respond. So hearing first, hearing and visuals first, and then response would be a close second because you need to be able to hear and see and then act quickly. Because that is the key to, to basically avoiding just about every wipe mechanic there is um, within Destiny 2 and Destiny 1. If you even go back and you try Destiny 1 raids if you've never done them. Um, but when you see and you hear cues telegraphing an important part of an encounter, use effective communication to inform the raid team as a whole. Now, normally your raid leader will do this for you. But if for some reason your raid leader has missed a call out or forgets because it happens, I know I've done it before and I've had people correct me or sound out something because I may be on my own mission. I may have my one goal in mind. I may have a different objective than you have in the raid. So, like for example, in the Scourge of the Past raid on the last boss, when you have a team going to get the spheres from the captains in order to activate the tanks, if I don't see something, I can't call it out. So if I'm trying to get a sphere, but you guys see that the boss is doing something that you can counteract, then that is up to somebody else to call that out, to make that call out in order to prevent a wipe. So different places on the boss's body will start to glow a hot red or like a hot yellow or something like that. And those are places you can shoot to keep him from doing things like shooting missiles, doing different types of barrages, and it will give you more time in order to avoid his wipe mechanic where he basically shoots a giant beam up in the air and explodes everything. So anyway, that's that point right there. So this is one I find myself doing more often than not, and that's why I put it in here, because I feel like if you were if you're not learning anything from your wipes, then you're just banging your head against a wall. So post-wipe learning point. Take a brief period before restarting the encounter to discuss what went wrong, and make a plan to resolve whatever oversight caused the wipe. Do not be afraid to ask questions if you don't understand something. Your raid leader will be happy you did, and as a raid leader, I always encourage asking questions. Anytime you don't understand something, anytime you need more explanation, more detail, it is always beneficial to the whole raid team, not just myself, but the whole raid team as a whole. Is if you don't understand something or you even feel like you're messing up, maybe you feel like you understand it, but you feel like you might be the one causing a wipe for some reason. Maybe you're standing in the wrong spot. Um, so, like, I know one of my friends, he had a problem with in the DPS phase of Scourge of the Past, where the boss opens his chest and the little servitor pops out. You know, he does that buff, and everybody's going to get either angular or circular, or was it angular, circular, and you know what the other one. Anyway, that's not the point. Anyway, you have to make a triangle, or you can make a triangle. You can really do any shape you want, but he was not understanding where he needed to be at that time, and he wasn't seeing that wave come over him, and he wasn't understanding where he needed to be when he got his buff. And he thought he was in the right spot, but it ended up he wasn't. And once he learned that, once he figured that out, he was like, "Oh, okay, I get it now. I was messing up. I was standing in the wrong spot, and I was killing people." So if you don't ask questions, you're going to not only cause yourself more frustration, but it's going to eventually frustrate everybody else too, because you're at that last boss. Just say it's the last boss, because that's the part most people get stuck on. It's the last boss in raids, uh, for the most part. And um, if you're not understanding something, you could be in there for 2, 3, 4 hours longer than you needed to be. Um, so anytime you don't understand something, ask your raid leader or ask somebody within the raid who has a good working knowledge of the raid mechanics. That way, everybody's on the same page and everybody can make a better effort to not kill other teammates, basically, and to complete the raid so that you can get the sweet, sweet loot we all want. All right, next part, weapon loadouts and modifications. Now, this is not something that I know a whole lot about. I'm going to be completely 100% honest with you. I know a lot about the weapons that I like to use, but other people love using weapons that I don't necessarily enjoy using, especially for bosses and stuff like that. I normally have my own weapons that I go for. Um, Now, certain encounters, especially in the Last Wish raid, there are different strategies where you need a certain weapon or should have a certain weapon in order to do a certain strategy. If you don't, it's not like it's the end of the world. You can still pass that boss encounter without those specific weapons. But more often than not, this is going to be decided on an encounter by encounter basis. Some weapons will work better than others against certain bosses, even if they are the same damage type, like Void or Solar or Arc. So just because you have a Void, Solar, or Arc and that boss is weak to one of those, doesn't mean that weapon is going to necessarily do the most optimal damage in that scenario. Um, but you will learn as you go, um, which weapons are more effective against certain areas and certain adds and boss fights. If you do not have a specific weapon, just find a few alternative options that will still be decent in the encounter. You may not do as much DPS as the people who have the optimal weapon, which I don't really like using that term, but it is a fact that there are optimal weapons. There have pretty much always been optimal weapons within the game of Destiny. This weapon, X weapon, is going to work super good against this boss. This weapon's going to work super good against this boss. You know, you're going to have that. You're going to have a meta that is going to develop. Um, but if you do not have that, you should not worry that you're not going to pass that encounter, because that's not how these raids were designed. They were designed to be completed with pretty much anything. I mean, people have done YouTube videos where they've completed raids with just white weapons and white gear. So it can be done. But like I said, you're wanting to try to be the best raider you can be. You're wanting to improve your raid skills. So just try to find some different alternative weapons if you don't have the optimal weapon. Use mods that will aid you in using the ideal weapons to the best of your ability, or whatever weapon you choose to bring to that fight. Um, what I normally do is I will figure out what the boss fight is like, and then I will pick a mod that will help me do more damage in that boss fight. That's how I normally work things, because some mods for weapons are really good against bosses, but it depends on where you're at too. So just say in the when you're facing Morgeth in the Last Wish, I've used a sniper strategy with the Whisper, Whisper the Worm. I've done that strategy plenty of times, and I've also done the shotgun strategy with the Ikelos shotgun. Both strategies work well, and both I don't have a problem with either one of those. But point is, you're going to use different mods. Well, not with those weapons, obviously, because you can mod the Ikelos, but you cannot mod the Whisper. Anyway, the point is, you can think of different ways, like especially if you don't have the optimal weapon and you're just using a regular sniper, you can use different mods within that sniper that will allow you to do more DPS or get better range or better stability, whatever you're struggling with that specific weapon, or what could be better to help you get more crits. because that's the main focus, is to do more damage. So, like I said, these are always on a boss by boss basis. They hardly, I can't say they'll never change, but they will hardly ever be the same from boss to boss. Because most of the time I'll have different weapons within in my inventory that, okay, I'm going to this boss, I'm going to switch to this, I'm going to switch to this guy, I'm going to switch a bunch of stuff around. There's hardly any weapons that I will keep on unless for COS. For COS, the one weapon I normally always keep on in COS, right now at least, is Jotun because it's stupid powerful and it can shoot things from forever away. It really doesn't have a capped range, to my knowledge, because I can hit wizards and knights, two-shotting them, and I can three-shot ogres with it. So why would I not use that? I know it's getting a nerf, so rip. But anyway, next, armor modifications. Another thing that I know just about zero about. But I'm going to help you try to understand how to be a better raider with those anyway. So, as far as I am aware, there are no required armor mods in order to raid. Because I've got into plenty of raids without any mods equipped at all. But if you do invest resources into adding the appropriate mods to various armor slots, it could greatly increase not only your survivability, but it could increase your damage output, your ammo acquisition, and it could have many other different benefits, especially if you're going in there with a specific build. Um, I know there are a couple guys on YouTube like Astacross. He does all kinds of different builds for the different classes, and some of these have super great potential in some of the raids, but they're very specific. So you'd have to have X amount of these mods and so forth. But I'm not going to get into detail with different builds here. I just wanted to. This is kind of like a quick slide to say that armor mods are important to help you becoming a better raider. Now, are you going to be a bad raider if you don't? I mean, it depends on your skill level. If you are very skilled, like if you're up here in the 70-80% of good skill, however you want to put it, you might not really need mods. But if you're struggling in any part, you could have been better. Even like if you're in the 70 to 80%, you could have been even better than that. You could maybe even be in the 90 percentile if you had mods, because you could have been putting out more damage. You wouldn't have ran out of ammo in certain scenarios, and if you had died, you would probably not have died had you had a certain mod equipped. Certain things like that. Now, I can't say that's going to always be the case, but armor mods are important. That's why they're in the game. So use those and be thinking about those with your builds, like what you want to bring into a certain fight. Um, and a good thing about the mods now, all the changes going into Shadowkeep, is that they're not going to be one-time use. You're going to always have the mods that you want. So whenever you get them, you can be like, oh, finally, I can put this anywhere I want now, as long as you have the appropriate power in your armor to do so. So anyway, that's about it for armor modifications. I really don't know a whole heck of a lot about them, to be honest. I know enough to be dangerous. All right, this is the part where like people have begged for this part. Like literally, this is every single thing I took on that survey. There was like 11 or 13. I don't know. There was more than 10 entries in that survey that I did, and almost everybody wanted me to explain how to stay alive. Staying alive in raids is probably the hardest thing to do. I will give you that. It is very difficult, especially depending on your power level. This is going to become even more increasingly difficult to do in Shadowkeep because they are upping the ante with nightfalls. They're not just going to be one set of nightfalls. They're going to be scaling nightfalls that are going to change depending on your light level. So this is not only going to be important for here for rating purposes. This is going to become super important in just regular game, like just your average whatever you go to do as far as missions and stuff like that, because things are going to hit harder in Shadowkeep. You are going to die faster in Shadowkeep, more than likely. They are nerfing a lot of things in Shadowkeep, so you may have been able to face tank something before, but you sure as heck aren't going to be able to do it now. So back to a raid setting. So bring your mind back to me. Let's get off that tangent that I threw us on and get back into the raiding mode, because in the raid you need to know your surroundings. You got to know everything in that general area of that raid. Every boss is going to have a raid room dedicated to him or her, whatever the case may be. So you have to know everything within that raid room. You have to become very familiar with where you can hide, where you cannot hide, where is okay to jump. You have to be very aware of your surroundings and where things are going to happen. Um, so I like using the last phase of COS as an example for this, where you have all the boxes that you can step on top of. And the pillars as well. You've got pillars on dogs and you've got pillars on void. So standing on those is super beneficial. I mean, unless you've got tons of fire incoming from like witches or whatever. Actually, this is first phase of COS, last boss, not the second, because that's where you're facing the witches. Um, I find so many people dying to the witches, and it's not really something that you should be dying to, because it's completely avoidable. They do move around. I do understand that sometimes they do move around, but if you kill them quick enough, they should not have time to really even do a whole lot as far as damage goes. If they are able to start moving around, it's going to become more hectic and stuff like that. But if you know your surroundings and where you can hide from their bolts, they won't be able to touch you. Like they won't be able to harm you, because you'll be in a safe zone basically, behind a pillar or on top of one of the boxes where they can't see you. Um, so anyway, knowing your surroundings within a raid encounter is probably the most crucial thing I could probably say. That is because if you know your surroundings, you know where you can hide and where you cannot. Don't face tank enemies, especially in raids, because the whole the whole point of raids is to survive, and that means staying alive. So if you do die, you're going to consume somebody else's raid token or res token to res you. And if you're in any type of prestige raid, like any of the old Leviathan stuff, that is not only going to take his token, but your token as well. So it basically counts as 2 deaths for every 1 in prestige. Now, I don't know if any of you guys still do those, but for those who do, it is crucial not to face tank enemies. Disengage. Get away from the firefight. That is another way to stay alive. Don't try to get in the mix. Don't try to be the hero and go and slam with your Titan, even though it would look so cool if you could actually pull it off. That's not the point. You can look cool in single player, or when you're like doing missions with friends and stuff, like, oh, look at all those Vex, I'm just gonna slam them all, and that would be awesome. It would be just as awesome as if you did it in a raid. However, in a raid setting, you're probably gonna die if you do that, because once you slam, if you don't kill all those enemies, or somebody like another ad that you didn't see is right next to you and he just shoots a plasma bolt at you and disintegrates you, then it's game over. He's like, okay, your buddy, if you're in the COS raid and you're trapped off from anybody else and your buddy doesn't have a res token, congratulations, you just wiped. So anyway, uh, fourth one, you probably don't even know what I'm talking about, but use emotes to your advantage. So this is something that I have encountered recently that is actually really handy. Um, I was watching streamers do PvP stuff in Crucible, like competitive, and I was seeing this guy constantly use his emotes. I was like, what is he doing? Why is he emoting there? And then I finally realized he's using it to see around boxes. So whatever cover he's behind or around, He's using it to see a bigger picture. He's using it to put himself in third person view so that he can see where specific enemies at. So he doesn't try to, like, he's trying to avoid being juked basically. And you can do that with ads too in raids. So if you see an ad coming, like a knight's chasing you with a sword or whatever, and you're running away from him and you hide behind one of the boxes in COS, and you're like, okay, is he coming? Where is he at? I don't know where he's at now because I don't have a visual field of him. If you click one of your emotes and you put yourself back in third person view, you can see where that knight's at. You can like move your camera around, make sure it's one of the persistent emotes. We got to add that. Make sure it's one of the persistent emotes that's not going to like put you back into first person view after that emote's completed. Make sure it's a persistent one that's constantly on, basically until you turn it off or move. Um, that way you can have a better visual field of what's going on. And then another crucial thing is in COS at least is knowing where those freaking exploding thrall are, because they pop out of nowhere. I'm telling you, they pop out of nowhere, and sometimes they're running at you, and sometimes they're not. Sometimes they just feels like they come out of nowhere, and then all of a sudden, boom, you're dead, and you're like, where was he? Like I didn't even see him. And your buddy, he's dealing with knights on his side, so he can't tell you, hey, watch out for that exploding thrall. He's about to get you, and then you're dead. So anyway, that's probably one of the coolest things I've found even recently that you can do to stay alive within raids. Um, but anyway, that's about it for staying alive. I can't think of any other tips other than improving your time to kill, basically. If you are able to kill enemies quicker, they will have less of a chance to kill you. But that's fairly obvious. So I figured I wouldn't put that on here. But anyway, that's the only other one I can think of off the top of my head right now that I didn't add in here because I felt like it was a little too um, duh. But anyway, next slide. We're getting close to the end here. I think this might be the second to last slide. Anyway, never give up, never surrender. Frustration happens to the best raiders. Turn your losses into learning experiences. So after a raid, if you try not to ever walk away from a raid too frustrated. If you've gotten to that point, then you've stayed in the raid too long. You need to, like, if you feel yourself starting to get frustrated with a raid and the mechanics, you're like, maybe we need to take a break and pick this up tomorrow or whatever. And in that time, if you want to still do stuff, then I would suggest getting together with that same raid team or staying with that same raid team and talking about what happened, talking about where you guys were falling short, who was messing up. You have to be honest with yourself. If you were messing up, what could you have done better in order to allow your team to progress further within the raid? It's going to happen, so don't feel bad about it because it's all a part of becoming a better raider. So ask yourself questions after the raid. What could I have done better? How can I be more prepared? Is there anything that I could have done to give myself a leg up on this raid? So learn your own weaknesses and turn them into strengths. Because in the end, if you improve on your weakest points within raiding, you will definitely become a better raider. It's a guarantee. 100% you will become a better raider if you improve on your weaknesses. If your weakness is dying too much, then put more resistance in or something. You gotta find some way to get over that barrier of dying. Is there something you're doing that's causing you to die more often than your other teammates? What are they doing that is keeping them from dying more often than you are? Ask them those questions. Be upfront with them. Be like, man, I feel like I'm just dying so much. What are you doing in order to not die as often? Like, how are you set up? Are you running 10 resistance and whatever else? Throw around numbers. Throw around statistics. Do whatever you have to do in order to gain at least a little bit of knowledge of what you were doing wrong. Because anytime that you can gain anything from your losses, you will become a better raider. And then I put this meme up here because it's so true with pretty much anything. That's my boy Jake the dog from Adventure Time. And in one of the episodes, he says, dude, sucking at something is the first step to being sort of good at something. And it's so true, especially in the case of raiding. It's probably it's probably one of the best quotes for raiding, to be honest, because I hear so many people say, "Oh, just suck at this. I'm not good." It's like, dude, you have to. If you're bad at something, then then find out what you could do better. There is always ways to improve. So anyway, that quote is perfect for this. Um, so don't feel bad if you're the one who is the weakest link in your raid team, because after you learn from your faults and where you were struggling, you may very well become the best part of your raid team, and you will help them get further and complete raids quicker and gain more loot and have more fun. That's what it's all about. It's not about getting frustrated and being down on yourself for not doing well. It's all about self improvement, and your team should be behind you in that. A good raid team is always going to be supportive of even their weakest of players, because that's how we improve. That's how we should, like as brothers and sisters in Christ, that's how we should improve one another. Always bringing each other up. Anyway, next slide. Oh, okay. This is pretty much the end. I think I got one more after this. So all the art you see in the background, I found it at artstation.com. Those are the following people who are responsible for all the art that I've put in the background. I put this up here because I just wanted to cover myself. I didn't know if using this from that website was allowed, but I did it anyway. So maybe this will be fine. I don't know. Anyway, next slide. And that is it. So eyes up, Guardians. Thank you very much for joining me in this. I had a lot of fun writing this up for you guys and teaching it. I'm always up for teaching things within Destiny 2, specific raids. I'm always up for just having fun, really. Like that's what this is all about for me, is having fun with you guys and helping people accomplish things that they felt were dang near impossible. Because I've felt that myself before. I've felt like, man, I cannot do this. And then once you strive so hard and make so many improvements, and then you finally get there and you beat that boss that's you've been struggling on for weeks, you're just like, yes, yeah, it's such a good feeling. It's not really even describable how good the feeling is when you finally beat that boss. It's just this moment of ecstasy where you just feel great. It's so worth it. And to see other people experience that brings me happiness. And all the other raid leaders out there, I'm sure it brings them happiness as well. I mean, that's why raid leaders do what they do. Um, well, at least the nice ones. I'm sure there are some raid leaders out there who could care less. They just want the loot. But good luck and have fun in all of your raids. And I'm opening this time up now for anybody in chat. If you have any questions at all for me, go ahead and ask. And I have no problem staying here for however long you have questions. So if there is anything that your mind is just curious about, or you want to know something about a raid, just go ahead and throw it out there. Ask some questions. I'm going to take a drink because I am parched now. I don't think I've talked that long in a long time. Oh, well, thank you. I appreciate that. Yes, social. The video will be up to share with others. It will be after tomorrow because I'm doing another one of these tomorrow, and I'm going to put up whichever one I think I did better on in on my YouTube channel, and then I'll get you a link from there I'll just throw it in your Discord, and you can pin that somewhere if you want, on one of the pages or wherever you like to. I don't care. I don't make any money off YouTube, and I don't really ever plan to, so it is what it is. I'm not monetized on anything. I just do this to help people out. I'm glad you guys enjoyed it. Oh, was one of the slides wrong? It said saying instead of staying. Whoops, typo. Yeah, those happen. I'll try to change that for tomorrow. Where is it at? Probably here, up here. Where was it at? Yeah, yep, right there. Saying alive. Whoops. Yep, typos happen. I'll definitely get that changed. Make that correction. Thank you for letting me know. Appreciate that. So the best way to find out a specific puzzle or mechanic if YouTube videos are vague. Which puzzle are you referring to? Well, you said puzzle or mechanic. So if YouTube videos are too vague about anything specifically, like if you're having trouble getting a good definition of what's going on, or how to accomplish something, I think probably the best way would probably be to read one of the written guides, in order to understand that portion of it better. Um, the Witch's Blessing, for example. Yeah, so if you if you're having a trouble understanding the Witch's Blessing, I think, because I did too at first, some of the videos were not um, very well defined in how they explained it. So what I did was I did go read up on that portion of the raid where they explained what the Witch's Blessing was, and I don't think I used Kotaku. I think I might have used PC Gamer. I think they did a write up on the raid, and in the very beginning, at the first encounter, they explained what the Witch's Blessing is and how it works. So I would that's what I would do. I would read it instead of watching it, because sometimes the things in videos, while you can still see it, you're not there and you're not aware of what's going on. And sometimes their audio is not synced up with what's going on in the actual raid. You kind of just have to listen to them and kind of piece the puzzle together as you go. For the most part, I think they do a good job. But that was one part. The Witch's Blessing was one part I did have to look up and actually read what was happening with the Witch's Blessing and how it actually worked. But you got to know that part very well. You have to know the Witch's Blessing very well, inside and out, and all the stuff that you can do with it in order to not die as much with that Witch's Blessing. Yeah, PC Gamer. Best source for written guides? I don't know. To be honest, I just randomly Google stuff. I never go to just one spot, to be honest. Um, so I'd say PC Gamer. I would say, I don't even know, Kotaku maybe. They might do a write up on it. Um, basically any place that you see does an entire raid guide write up is probably pretty good. I would think. Maybe they're not, but at least you have multiple ones to choose from, because there was at least three that I saw on different websites that you could. Oh, Polygon, yeah, that's another one. Yeah, Polygon they're pretty solid with what they come out with. Yeah. So yeah, I would just choose one, and if you're struggling with a certain part, read up on it. And sometimes words convey an idea better than watching a video and having somebody try their best to explain what's going on. Because I know that helped me with the Witch's Blessing for sure. All right. Any other questions? In Crown of Sorrows, did y'all consider it luck that you beat the final part? Um, no, I wouldn't say that I considered it luck. There is just in that part of the raid, you have to be super duper specific with everything that's going on. Um, so I would, if you guys do it again, let me watch you guys, and I want to see what happens, like where you guys are actually struggling, because I know you guys have tried it a lot, and that's where you get stuck at a lot. So if any of you like social, if you choose to stream it with your group that you go in with, because I completely think that you guys have the capability of downing that boss. I just think that you're probably getting hung up on some things, um, some maybe small shortcuts that you can do to make that fight just slightly easier for everybody. Because it's a rough encounter. I'm not gonna lie. It's probably one of the roughest encounters in D2 right now, to be honest, because the mechanics are so heavy. Um, there's a lot going on, a lot to think about, a lot to do in a short amount of time. But if you can get a good idea of what's going on within that last encounter, there are a few shortcuts that you can do in order to optimize your DPS during DPS phase. Let's see. What do you do if you have one person bringing down the "we got this" vibe in a raid? Do you mean like they're being super negative? Is that what you're getting at? Yup. Okay. Hmm. One person. That's hard, man. I mean, if they're making it a bummer just to play the game, then that's no fun for anybody. Um, because it's all about having fun. And if you don't, if you don't consider how your words are affecting the entire raid team, then you could be putting yourself in a bad position to not be in a raid at all. Like you might not get invited back. Um, I think if it's notorious, if like they're constantly doing it, I would take them aside and say, "Hey, man, we really like raiding with you, but there are a few things that we need you to help change within the raid team. We need a little bit more positivity. We know that we're struggling with this part, but the input of negativity is not helping us progress in this specific scenario." So, I mean, that's the best way I know to put it, man. Ask them. I mean, if they don't really have anything productive to add, like can we try this? It would be different if they were adding input to the idea of progression. But if all it is negativity, then that's just bringing the team down, and nobody really wants to hear that. So uh, it just if it's notorious, I would say maybe they're having a bad day. But if it's notorious, like they're doing this every single raid, and you notice it every time, even when it's something you guys have already accomplished, like it's a boss fight you've already beaten, but you're struggling on it that day for whatever reason, and he's all like, "Oh man, we suck" or something like that. Just be like, "Hey man, eh, we don't we don't need that added negativity to the raid." I mean, that might not be the best way to put it either, but you got to know that not just he's not just the one cog in the wheel. It takes a fire team of 6 in order to make this happen. Unless you're extremely good at the game and you can do it with 2 people, which has been done, but it's crazy. Anyway, that's what I would suggest as far as dealing with some negativity. In some raids, it seems like all the stars align just right for a smoother run. Example where things spawn each time you start with an encounter. Yeah, well, in COS, you can always count on like those last 2 phases. Phase 1, where you're trying to kill the deception, you always can count on the witches spawning. That's always going to happen. The witches are always going to spawn, and then after the 2 witches spawn, the ogre is going to spawn. And then, depending on where Galran is at the time, if he's in your area, you just got to be able to run around and avoid him. Other times, it's going to be a little bit more difficult because you might not have the deception, but you may have to worry about getting the crystal and then getting the deception after the crystal. But what if the crystal's coming just like seconds after you kill the deception and you don't have time to go back and get your buff and then kill the crystal and then you wipe and then, it's just one thing after another. But I know what you're saying, though. It does seem like the stars do align sometimes and fall in the right place. But I there is ways to think about whatever encounter you're in to help you better gauge what's going to happen and when. So it may just be a timing issue. Because like for the last phase of Galaram, I think sometimes people try to go too quick. So just like the example I just provided. So you get your deception to spawn, and then after your deception is spawned, then you just automatically go ahead and kill it. You're like, I have the buff, let's go. But you didn't realize the crystal's coming from Void over to you now, and now you're left without a buff. So then you're not able to get a buff. Go back to your witch's circle, whatever you want to call that thing, the switching circle, switching sphere, and then get another buff in time to get back to the crystal with your partner who has the debuff and get, or does not have a buff rather, sorry, and then get that crystal down. It's a lot of stuff going on with that, but yeah, I totally understand. True that, true that. What's your strat for final encounter of COS? We assign one team to crystals, one team to deception, one team to ads. I've never heard of that strategy before. I suppose it could work, but that is definitely not the strategy I use. So what I do for the last encounter of COS is I will have the people basically going back to the same spot they were before. So you have stairs, you have dogs, and you have void. Whoever was in those areas in phase 1 will go back to those areas. You have the green pool that will spawn at the beginning of the last encounter, phase 2. So you have the pool. So 3 people are going to have to stand in that pool after you activate the boss. They will get the buff, and they will run off to their respective sides. Obviously, the pool is going to spawn in the stairs location. You're not going to be locked off from each other like you were in phase 1, All the doors are open. Like there's no walls, barriers blocking you from each other. So once the 3 people have the buff and they go to their specific areas, then you have to wait for ads to start spawning. And what I do is I have people back up next to the far wall. So wherever Galaran spawns normally, like you see Galaran's body, you want to get as close to that wall as you can without dying. Basically, you can be right in front. Yes, that's where the enemies are spawning. I do understand that. So you're going to have enemies spawning in right beside you. But you will avoid all the fireballs that Galaran's throwing. He will literally throw them right over your head. You won't have to worry about getting hit by any of the fireballs. And in phase 2, all you have is knights. You don't have witches in phase 2, just the knights that are going to spawn up. So I had my Jotun, and anytime I would also get the blessing first. Majority of the time, I always had blessing first. So when I got back to my area and I got to the front with my partner, we would always do 2 rounds of ads. So that's 2 knights. So I would get my 2 knights, and I believe 3 or so ads, like the smaller thrall guys. They will not the exploding thrall, but the other guys that just shoot at you regularly. 3 or 4 of them will spawn, and my teammate would get those because he's the only one that could shoot them. Remember, you have to have that buff in order to shoot certain ads. So, hang on one second. So after that, we automatically go switch. So my teammate, unless we have the crystal, let me preface this. If the crystal appears, so say I'm at void. So if the crystal appears at void, right at or when I'm killing the second round of ads, so my second knight. So after I kill him, if I know that at any point very soon that crystal's spawning in at void, then I will wait for the crystal to spawn. So then the crystal would spawn. I would get up there, me and my partner, we would shoot the crystal. Crystal explodes. I would say crystal's going to stairs, and then we would go switch. That'd be our strategy. So we switch then, and we try to get there as quickly as we can to switch because I know that ogre is spawning. That ogre's normally always spawns there at void in that time frame because I'm normally always on void side. I believe it happens close to the same way on dog side. I've done it on dogs too. But you get back there, you kill the ogre as quickly as you can, and basically you're waiting for your deception to spawn. You're waiting for Galran to hold out his hand and spawn the deception. So up until that point, that is all you're doing. That is literally the rinse repeat cycle that you have to follow in order to keep that phase going and keeping up with your timer and how much time you have left on your witch's blessing in order to maximize your your life, basically your lifespan for your team. So anyway, let's just say that Galran does spawn there at Void next. What I would do is I would make sure I know where the crystal is at. So if I don't know where it is by a call out currently, I will ask, where's crystal? And whoever had it last would say, crystal's at stairs, or crystal's going 2 dogs, or something like that. So if it's going 2 dogs, I know it's not coming to me next. I know I'll have time to go to kill the deception and then go get another buff before that crystal hits void. However, if the crystal was just at dogs and dog says crystal's going to void, then I have to get that crystal before I kill the deception. If I kill the deception before I get the crystal, then I won't be able to just hop up and kill the crystal after I kill or after I use my buff to break the shield of the deception. So anyway, that's another big thing that you have to worry about, and it's hard. That's probably one of the hardest parts of the encounter is not messing that up. And it's not about speed. It's not about speed there. It's all about timing. It's timing whether you should or should not do that at this point. So next part, just assume everybody has their deception down, their Galaran deception down. and it's DPS phase. So let's say instead of Void, Galaran's going to spawn up there at stairs. So we know everybody's got to get to stairs. What needs to happen is wherever everybody's at, you need to switch before going into DPS phase. You need to pass buffs before going into DPS phase. So if you know that stairs was the last deception to get killed, then that needs to be called out as well. So that's the last deception. Okay, everybody switch. So when you switch, you're refreshed. Everybody's refreshed and ready for DPS phase. Anybody who does not have a buff, I believe, needs to be throwing AoE grenades down at their feet when you're doing DPS phase. You need to kind of time that out and do that on a kind of like I'd say like a 10-second or so basis. Like roughly every time Galaran raises his hands again, somebody needs to throw another nade at their feet. And everybody will be shooting the hands, but whoever needs to throw a nade, go ahead and throw a nade at your feet because you're going to have all kinds of thrall swarming around you, hitting you. And yeah, you're in the Well of Radiance, but sometimes that's not even enough to combat death when you got like 15 thrall swarming around you, smacking you in the face. So, assuming you don't get him down in one phase, you go back. The 3 people who got the buff first will wait for that buff pool to appear again, and then you will all go back. If you all still have your buff remaining, which hopefully you do, at the end of DPS phase, you just go switch. And I would suggest switching at the nearest one, and then going back to your areas. That's what I would suggest. So, say DPS phase just ended, and somebody says, "Oh, we need to switch." Say if you're at stairs and Galran was at stairs, but DPS phase just ended, go to stairs switching circle. Everybody just go to stairs switching sphere, and then everybody switch at the same time, just as if you were doing the very first encounter of the raid. Everybody gathered around the ball and everybody switch, and then you can go to your separate areas. That way, you don't have one person trying to run all the way over to dogs to switch their blessing with their partner, because more than likely they're not going to have enough time to get all the way over to dogs before their buff expires, depending on how long DPS phase lasted. So anyway, and it's just a rinse repeat cycle after that. Uh, that's my strategy for beating the last encounter. I know I just said a bunch of stuff, and it might be a lot harder to follow. But if you guys ever do a raid when I can like watch you or record it so I can see what you guys are doing, I can give you some more pointers on what I feel is happening. And it might not be mechanic wise, it could be communication wise, something that's being miscommunicated or misunderstood by somebody or something. Um, but anyway, yeah, that's pretty much what my suggestion would be for last phase of COS, because that's a hard boss fight, man. I'm not gonna lie, he's a booger to deal with most of the time. Thanks for coming, Wally. Appreciate it. No more questions? All right. Okay, no problem, no problem. Well, thank you guys so much, whoever stopped by and enjoyed the little class. Um, I will be putting one of these 2 up on YouTube eventually to see, or for people to watch to um, hopefully gain some knowledge about rating in general and how they can improve. So I appreciate it. I hope you guys had a good time, and I guess I'm going to sign off from here. So um, have fun in Shadowkeep next week. It's going to be awesome. I will be grinding the crap out of it as well. So yeah,